So how can we become the type of person that people trust? Today, we are diving into a very powerful book by Dr. Henry Cloud called Trust. And I'm going to start this off by reading you a very short synopsis of my first highlighted page. And that is the answer to the question, is it safe, begins in milliseconds. What he described is when we think about like trusting other people, one of the questions we ask ourselves is it safe? He says it begins in milliseconds, but it can determine the future of a personal relationship, a family, a business deal, or an entire company. Why? Because trust sends a signal to our entire being that says, move forward. When we trust, we move toward a person, a group, a deal, a company, or whatever the object of our trust may be, and invest our hearts, time, energy, and love or wallets. When we don't trust, we get a strong internal message in the opposite direction that says, move away. Every day, in 1,000 ways, with every personal and business encounter, we decide either to move toward or to move away. Guys, welcome to our Business Leadership Book Club. This book has been, man, a game changer. I actually haven't been able to put it down. I know a lot of you guys are reading this along with us inside of the app, and I will leave you the link below. If you're not a part of our actual book club where we share every single day some key takeaways that we're getting throughout the book, but this book having to do with trust is a game changer. Now, you're going to see in this live stream, we are going to be talking about like the book in terms of like what spoke loudest to me. I do want to hear from you guys as we go, like what spoke loudest to you. I know we have some live people here. What's going on, everybody? But also we're going to see this from the lens of a business owner, even though trust is really important in multiple other areas. So I'm going to bring things up related to how this actually applies to business, how I kind of like see it applying to business, some of the things I learned throughout this book, and some of the things that were biggest eye-opening for me. But super pumped to have you guys here with us. Of course, we are here not only as modern leaders, but we are here to make a huge impact in the world, create a business we love, and really connect with our family better than ever before. And how we can do that is by leaning into developing trust, knowing when to give trust, when not to give trust, and how to repair it, and all those great things. So let's dive in today to the introduction. So what I kind of like shared with you is the questions that we're asking ourselves back and forth is, do I feel safe? Is it safe? This applies to a relationship, but it also applies to, are you going to give this person money for this thing? Are you going to buy this thing? Are you going to purchase this thing? Are you going to join this group? Are somebody going to join you? Is somebody going to buy your program? And really being able to answer, is it safe, is not a simple like thing to answer, because there's several different pieces, and he's going to talk about them in the book, that just open my eyes to how we can think about building trust with people, especially when we're talking about social media, when we're talking about YouTube, when we're talking about connecting with people, right? We've all heard that adage, like people do business with people they know, like, and trust. I feel like that last piece is the piece that we really need to focus on, is how to get people to trust you in an authentic way and to not feel like you're manipulating or doing anything like that, but to get them to feel like it's safe here. I'm ready to take that step forward, all right? So chapter number 1, he says, everything depends on trust. Now, what spoke loudest to me here is he says it's important for us to know that while trust often begins with a feeling, it can't only be based on a feeling, an emotion, or some kind of sense. It has to be rooted in more solid, observable, essential qualities, which we'll explore in part 2 of this book. He says trust is the fuel for all life. What he was talking about here is sometimes we don't know. We're just getting an inclination like we don't really trust this person, or maybe people don't really trust us. And it's kind of like we think that it's intuition, and it can be intuition, but we have to think about like, what are the actual things that we can document to see, like, should I trust this person or should I not trust this person? And yes, intuition is a part of that, but there's also like these other ways that we can see, like actually physically, in whether or not like that person is trustworthy or they're not trustworthy. And on the reverse, like what we're putting out in terms of how we're connecting with people, whether people are going to trust us or people are not going to trust us, right? In chapter number 2, it says, we are wired to trust. He says, so if trusting is so dangerous, because you actually are putting yourself out there in a vulnerable position when you're trusting someone. But he says, so if trusting is so dangerous, why would we not be like this man? Let me see what this story was about. People who are just like trusting people and I guess he was on like a plane flight ride, and somebody was asking him some questions about what he did for a living, the person who was writing this book. I guess that person had been burned, and they said, I don't trust anyone. And he's like, oh, really? He's like, you're trusting that the airplane pilot like actually knows how to get actually to the airport, right? You're trusting that the person who packed your food didn't put salmonella in it. He's like, you're trusting people. It's just a matter of like, maybe you feel like you're not trusting anybody, but trust is a natural part. We actually can't like actually move forward if we don't have trust. So he said, why would we not at least stop trusting people in personal relationships or in the business arena if we've been burned? He says, why not simply try to avoid trust as much as possible? He says, after all, it is true that trust sets us up to be disappointed or deeply hurt. It involves risk and we can lose a lot. So why not just avoid it as much as we can? Simply put, we can't, because there are good reasons for that. And he goes on to talk about like being biologically wired to trust. And like there's some pieces of our existence as being a human that is required for us to be able to work together as a team, to be able to like live our everyday life. And so we have to have some kind of trust instead of just doing what he said this guy did, which is like, I don't trust anybody. But in reality, he really has to trust people. Otherwise, life just can't really go on the way that we want it to. He says, the care, comfort, and love the baby receives when it's first born are gradually internalized. Neuroscience teaches us that these become actual living physical structures inside the infant's brain. He said, actually, let me read this first part. He said, trusting is the most natural and instinctual things that infants do. They trust first for food and then for holding and then comfort. As they experience hundreds of instances of first being in distress and then consistently being delivered from the pain of hunger and loneliness by a caring person, they trust the trust they automatically placed in mom or a caretaker pays off even multiplies. Trust followed by satisfaction builds even more trust. That's why the care, comfort, and love the baby receives are gradually internalized. And now we start to find this place where when we trust someone and they follow through, it actually builds satisfaction and builds more trust. So one of the things that I think about this is like, for example, if you are helping people, like let's say through social media or through posts and through things like that, like it's this process of people being a little bit vulnerable, people like actually spending time watching your video, and are you delivering what you're saying that you're going to deliver? And then once they have that feeling of like, oh, wow, this person did deliver what they said they were going to, then it builds the trust so that the next time they come and they consume your stuff. And then when they build that trust again, because you deliver, you do it again. Instead of doing like just weird like bait and switch kind of things or like clickbait stuff where people get into a video or anything like that. And then before you know it, like it doesn't teach you or have anything related to what it originally said it was going to. That's going to like make that distrust like kind of like come and separate you apart, right? So when you think about when it comes to your business, are you like delivering on the promises that you're making, right? And every time you deliver on a promise, even if it's a small one, it builds up that level of trust in us. All right, he says, humans are literally wired for trust, as trust is the fuel and currency that makes all life work, from the very beginning until the very end. Placing our trust in other human beings makes every system develop. This happens emotionally as a child grows and develops. It happens physically as the emotional attachment that trust brings causes brains to develop normally, immune systems to function, body weights to hit normal levels, brain sizes to achieve milestones, and so on and so on. It's such an important part of the development of our brain, of our whole entire body, is actually related to trust. He says to trust is human. You might have heard of mirror neurons. They're another example of how we are wired to trust. In the most basic terms, neurons, which are nerve cells, function as communicators in the body. They receive and transmit information and stimuli. Mirror neurons are at work when one person observes another person doing something, and then that person naturally imitates it. Neuroscience and fancy diagnostic equipment that allows us to see inside people's brain have taught us about mirror neurons and show that when we feel a feeling and our body expresses it physically, in a smile or even through a minuscule muscle movement, the brain of the person we are talking to forms a connection with us and mirrors our own feelings and expressions in a deep, natural bond that causes the two of us to connect even more deeply. This is why having those kind of conversations, being able to like have one-on-ones where you're actually talking to people is such a game changer, especially when it comes to business-based stuff, right? He says to trust is human, and we can't trust. When we can't trust, we lose a lot of the human experience. So what he's saying is, when we don't trust, and we don't connect with people on that level, they can't trust us back. It's one of those things where sometimes I know that I've had situations where it's kind of hard because the trust has gone. And when the trust is gone, it's one of those things where if I now take this situation and move it into multiple other areas of my life, I actually can't develop trust in those other areas because, like he says in a little bit, actually having the ability of trusting someone and really developing that muscle helps you to be able to get them to trust you as well. Okay, chapter number 3, by the way. Oh, it looks like we have 2 brand new members to our inner circle. Marianne, what's going on, Marianne? And Caroline, aka Rebecca Dickey, welcome to the inner circle. By the way, for those of you guys who don't know, we have an inner circle program, which is basically something where we take deeper dives into a lot of the different concepts and stuff that we're talking about here to help, once again, build a business you love without sacrificing your family time or your mental health. If that's something you're interested in, definitely check out the link. It's join below. It's our community on YouTube where we do 2 live streams per month, specifically related to the things you guys are struggling with. Okay. Chapter number 3 is learning to trust. Learning to trust. Let's see what kind of spoke out to me. Oh, man. Okay. Clarity can lead to trust or protect you from trusting. He says, you may be thinking of circumstances in your life that aren't on my above list. You feel confused. Let's see. There are the same 5 that help Shannon and Colin gain immediate clarity and serve as the model for this book. So here is how you learn to trust people. Okay. It says, you trust someone when you feel your needs are understood, felt, and cared about. So you trust someone when you feel your needs are understood, felt, and cared about. Number 2 is you can trust someone when you feel their motive is for you and not just for themselves. Number 3, and we're going to go into each one of these individually, is you can trust someone when you feel that they have the ability or capacity to guard and deliver results for what you have entrusted them in. Number 4 is you can trust someone who has the character or personal makeup for what you entrusted them with. And number 5 is you can trust someone who has a track record of performing in the ways you need them to perform. These are the 5 essentials for trust that he talks about. And I got to say, it's kind of eye-opening when you can see it in this perspective, because then you can see how you can show up in these 5 areas and maybe which one of those areas you can lean into a little bit more. So let's talk about the first, understanding the first essential of trust. He said, leading someone to trust you does not begin with convincing them that you are right. Instead, it starts off by you understanding where they are. He says, you can feel the difference between the simple statements in the first line and the ones in the second list. Let's see. Okay, there's a difference. So you explain to your boss why something isn't working and he doesn't hear you. He just keeps telling you why it should work just fine and keep doing it his way. Versus a boss who says, I understand that what I gave you to do isn't working. That's got to be frustrating. Help me understand what the obstacle is. Tell me how what I thought isn't a right fit so I can understand and help you find out the right one. This would be the first person. You try to get your spouse to see how she is hurting you or how you feel sometimes in the relationship, and she negates what you're saying. Versus having a spouse that says, so you feel like I'm more attentive to my work and friends than you? Like they come first and you feel alone a lot? Like you don't matter so much as they do? Like you don't matter to me as much as they do? That's horrible. I think what he's trying to say here, he says the key is to go somewhere productive where we feel like we've been heard. We know sometimes that when we know better what people need, what the real issues are or aren't. Sometimes listening to all people want anyway, and nothing more is needed. Sometimes listening to all people want anyway and nothing more is needed. I feel like this book kind of came out a little bit too early because there's a couple grammar mistakes and it doesn't make sense to me. But the piece that I really connect with here is getting to a place of understanding what the other person's problem is. So this is part 1 of developing trust. And that is as a business owner, as a parent, as a spouse, really getting to the root of what the other person, what their problem is or what they're struggling with or the way that they're feeling right now is going to give them that feeling of understanding that you know where it is they're coming from. And it's not coming from a place of like you pointing fingers or anything like that. It's coming from a place of, for me, it's like life coaching. It's asking powerful questions to get to the root of what's actually going on, right? Going a few levels deeper and not just taking what is on the surface, but actually diving in deeper to figure out like what is actually driving that behavior. I just got off a call with somebody who's interested in becoming one of our life coaches. And we were kind of talking about this is like most people don't understand that there's this surface level thing that you're kind of like thinking. But in reality, if you think you don't have the time or the energy or whatever, it's not really to the level of understanding because you're not, you like a lot of times that service level and that really doesn't show the thing underneath that. And when you ask a few more questions, like, tell me more about that, you would be amazed how somebody who says they don't have time actually comes down to at the bottom of the line. It's like, you know what? I feel like if I were to invest in this and to take these actions, like I don't believe in myself that I could even be able to achieve this stuff. And so even though they came out with they don't have the time, in reality, what we found is like, it's actually a belief in themselves. Because I was like, if you spent this time doing this and you knew for sure that you could create a business, you could do this, 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 and this, all these things you told me you wanted to do, would you do it? They were like, absolutely. I'm like, so what is holding you back? And it's like, well, I didn't even realize this, but maybe like it's the belief in myself that this is possible for me, that this is something that I can achieve, right? And when you have that deeper level of understanding, not only does the person go, I didn't even realize that happened, but now you kind of like, you connect on a different level and that trust is really built because before you give people the steps to take and all of the things that they can do and how your program is going to, or how your product or how whatever it is you're trying to sell is going to work for them, you got to find out where they're at, right? What it is they're struggling with and what it is like on a deep level that you can actually help them with so that you can actually give them the advice, whether it is to join your program or sell something if it's in your business, but do it from a place of like, no, it's because I know what this struggle is and I know that this thing is going to be able to help you achieve it. But if you don't know where that person's coming from, it's irrelevant. I was actually also having a conversation on the phone earlier today, something related to trusting in a family, right? And having those conversations about like, you know, somebody is not showing up the way that they want them to, their significant other. And it's just a different space to come into when you come from an understanding of like, I wonder why they would do that. Or I wonder why they would say that. I wonder why that seemed totally cool for them to do. Rather than I need you to do this, you made me feel this way, why would you do that to me? Instead, approaching it from a perspective of like getting to know why that person even did that. And when you come from a place of understanding and you realize like, oh my gosh, it didn't have anything to do with the way that I thought it was, right? It's because I was willing to get to understand their perspective, right? I really feel like a lot of the world's problems would come to an end if we were willing to like understand where the other people were coming from. Not to agree with them. I don't believe we should all agree with each other, but I do believe that like coming to an understanding of like why people are doing or saying certain things would give us so much more trust between them that we could actually help solve a lot of the world's problems for sure. Okay, so that's step number one, or that's part number one of the trust. So having a understanding of where the person is. The second essential element of trust is motive. It's the person's motive when it comes to the person that you're trying to trust. It says real trust is built not only through understanding, but making sure that the other party's motives is right, meaning that they are for your good. The second, he said, it's one of the things that keeps our entire system wondering about people. Why is he or she doing this? Who is it really for? What are they trying to get out of this? Do they want something good for me too? These are important questions that everyone or everything about us continually wants to decode in order for us to be truly careless about the situation, right? And when we have trust, that's kind of what we are. We're kind of careless because we believe that person is going to help. Not only do they understand us, but they're actually going to help show up for us on a different level, right? And we have this feeling of just being careless. We don't have to think about it. But when you think about this whole process of like motive, it is something that, number one, it drives me when I'm wanting to buy something, right? Is somebody just telling me what I want to hear so that they can sell me something? Or do I feel like this person really does want to help me? They understand like who and where I am and what my problems are, but also I have this feeling that they actually want to help me, right? They're not just trying to sell a program for just the reason of trying to sell a program, right? I mean, I don't want to say this because I guess I'll lead with this. And that is like, sometimes people come to me and we get on a one-on-one call. They have a conversation with me. They want to get one of my programs. And I find out like it's not a good fit. And one of the things that I feel like is a really big trust builder for me is that I refuse to like allow people to buy programs from me and pay me money for things that I don't think is going to actually help them move the needle. And if they have that conversation or like, I really feel like this is going to be a good fit and I feel like I understand where they're at and it's going to help them, then I'm like, I'm all for it. But I've actually pushed away quite a few clients because of this, because I'm like, no, I don't feel this is in alignment with what you need right now. I feel like this is. And sometimes it's another program of mine. Sometimes it's something else entirely different. Sometimes it's somebody else entirely different. But I feel like doing that not only builds trust for them, but it also helps me feel good about the situation. Because when I'm doing that, when I'm coming from a place of like, no, my motive is to help them. And if it's not through me, I'm 100% cool with that. I just want to help this other human on the other side. It makes me feel good when I go through and when I keep working my business. And it's just something that I try to live by. I'm probably like leaving money on the table by it, but I also feel like when it comes to like the whole trust thing, like that is more important to me than being able to make that money, right? And it's not that the way that I do it is right and everybody else is wrong. It's just like what fuels me to make sure that I'm in alignment with my core values, which is integrity, family, impact, as well as health. And making sure that I'm in alignment with that is such a critical piece for me. Otherwise, I just feel really inauthentic. But you do you. You do you. But this is the piece related to motive that people are always asking themselves. Why is this leader asking me to do this? Why is this person trying to sell me this? Why is this person showing up in front of my newsfeed right now? Why is this book something that's coming? And it's like this thing of like, if we don't answer that question for them, they're going to answer it. And it's probably not going to be an answer that you really like, right? And so that's the repetition that we were talking about in the beginning is, are you showing up? Are you delivering? Are you sharing what it is that you said you were going to share? Are you getting them like, whether it's the results or doing what you promised them to do? I mean, even for this live stream, it's like, hey, we're going to help review this book. We're not reading it page by page, even though I think you should, but we're going to just dive into the things that spoke loudest to me so I can kind of like share them with you guys here. And that's what I'm doing is I'm delivering on that promise so that the next time you're like, oh, hey, there's another book club call. I know that he's going to deliver on this. And thinking about that for you and your business is really, really critical, but also for you and your relationships, right? Okay, he says, when motive is to benefit others and not just ourselves, everyone profits. I truly believe that's true. Is like everybody can benefit if we're willing to see things a little differently. He says, the takeaway here is that trust increases when we know that someone's motive is not just about themselves, but about us or about a higher purpose that we value as well. So that's the second essential part of trust. So the first one is like knowledge, right? Do they know where I'm coming from? Understanding. There we go. Not knowledge. Understanding. Do they understand where I'm coming from? Number two is what's their motive? Do they have a motive? Do they actually want to help me or do they not want to help me? Are they trying to, get me to go down this path just because that's the path that they want me to go down? Or do they really want what's best for me? What's crazy, guys, is as you go, you'll see that some of these things get answered automatically by your brain. Like you're not even consciously thinking of it. You're like, oh, yeah, I trust this person. Let's take this next step, right? But I really feel like examining those things, not only when they've gone wrong, but also when they've gone right, to realize like maybe there was some of these signs. Maybe there was some communication that was going on. Maybe there were some conversations, or maybe there was just things that you realized about that person that just made them feel authentic, that made you feel like, hey, I should trust them. Because not only is that important for you to move forward, but it's also important for you to put out to the world, right? So if you see somebody do something that makes you feel like you don't trust them, you should probably not do that yourself, right? Because then you're going to be doing that same thing where people are not going to feel like they're trusting you or they're willing to trust you. Okay, chapter number 6. Chapter number 6 is this is the third essential quality of trust, and that is ability. Okay, understanding and motive must be supported by ability, right? I was actually reading this one. Hold on. I'll share a story with you in a second. It says, we could list more, but you've seen it and probably done it as well as we have. For many reasons that are good, such as the ones in the scenarios I've described, we must extend trust to someone to deliver what we entrust to them, yet we do not look closely enough at the specific ability that is necessary for them to come through in the ways that we need them. Note to self, you can really like someone and trust them in many ways, yet not be able to trust them in a specific way that is very important. And he says, and it's okay to say no and not move forward in that arena. What he was talking about is like, kind of like people who have grown up or their parents have like created this really awesome business, right? And so what they do is they kind of like pass down the business to their kids, but their kids like don't have any of the skills that they need or any abilities to be able to run the business. They're just doing it because they're the heirs of the business. And, sometimes he says like, it's okay to say no and to not move forward in that arena because they don't have the ability to be able to do it, right? It's not just the fact that it's a family business, but they're not capable of doing it. The reason why I was kind of laughing about this is because like one of the things that I get constantly taught over and over and over again, and Teresa gets taught this too, is that I am not the handyman. Like I $1 million business owners can trust me with coaching them. Like I can be trusted to teach somebody how the skills of life coaching and creating a business and creating an awesome connection with their family and being the spouse that they want to be. Like I can do that. I can help people through that. But if you try to get me to fix something in your house, it's going to be way broken, even more than it was when I first started out. And it's like from the most simple thing. I just am not the kind of person that you want to trust to work on your car, to change your oil, to fix the sink, to do anything like that. And it actually hurts. Like it's more painful than than the process of it being broken in the first time. So thinking about this, like related to trust, we have to like trust that person in a very specific area, right? So if you trust somebody in this area does not mean that you should trust them in this area. It's different, right? And it's crazy because like when I was thinking about this, I'm like, oh my God, like this makes total sense. I trust somebody like so much, but like, why don't I trust them in this area? And it's because like, it doesn't just blanket move to everything. Trust has to be something that the person has ability to actually do. You can trust someone and believe in them and love them so much and then not trust them in an area where you're like, okay, this area though, yeah, probably not going to actually trust them in there, right? So the person must have ability, which also means for you as the business owner, you must have ability. But number two is you must show them your ability. This is one thing I'm going to be doing a lot more of moving forward. And that is like, I talk a lot about like coaching business owners and helping people through situations related to their business, related to their family connection and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of you guys don't get an opportunity to see that if you're just watching me here on YouTube. You don't get to experience that. Like you get to experience me going through this book club or being a part of the inner circle and answering questions and stuff for you guys as we go. But you don't get to experience me coaching live in a group kind of like atmosphere or even like a one-on-one. And so my goal is to do that more often because when you see the abilities that what I'm able to do, you're going to be able to trust me a little bit more in this arena versus if I never did that at all in front of you. And all I did was YouTube videos, which is kind of like what I do right now, right? Of course, the live streams on the weekends are a little bit different because I do get the opportunity of doing some coaching and stuff. But if you're just watching the videos, you're not going to have that full like feeling of like, oh wow, he has this ability. So I want to turn that back around to you. Are you showing your people that you have that ability? Whether it's through testimonials or you taking, you doing it out in public? Are you bringing awareness to some of the people that you're getting results for? Bringing awareness to some of the people who are using your product if it's a physical product? Like how can you show them that you have the ability in that specific area? It's going to build trust really, really it's going to be able to build trust well, but remember, don't forget the other ones, which is understanding and motive, right? Which is the first two. All right. Chapter number 7. By the way, I know we have 4 incredible humans here who are here live with us. I want to hear some of your guys' takeaways. What is your favorite takeaway so far from what we've talked about? All right. Chapter number 7 is the 4th essential of trust. All right. It is character. Character. I remember, I was actually reading about it, him saying that like, have you ever had that where like somebody feels like it looks like they have all their stuff together and then maybe like when the cameras go off or whatever, like they're berating people or yelling at people or getting angry and you're like, yeah, I don't want to buy any programs or I don't want to buy anything from them because of the way that they act. I'm sure you probably have people in your life that you're like, yeah, I would probably never want to buy this thing because of either an employee, and this is crazy too. Even if it's an employee who does that thing, it could prevent you from buying stuff from that brand because you associate that employee with the brand. It's pretty crazy when you think about that, right? But it's all in this one. This is all about character. He says, he created a list of soft skills that are really important, not only through leadership, but also through developing trust. The first one is virtue. Virtue. He says, virtue is a quality of someone who seeks goodness and has high moral character. The way we usually think of character. So he says, virtue is one of those soft skills. Next one is knowledge. The Greek word used in the passage of knowledge means applied wisdom. So not just wisdom, but actually taking action on it. And when that person does, you develop trust because they have the character of taking action. Self-control. He says here, nobody really likes to trust anyone who is impulsive or angry or lacks self-control in an area. And even if it's an area outside of that, even if it's an area related to something unrelated to wherever you're doing, it's going to diminish that trust. Perseverance. He says, usually the areas in which we need to be able to trust someone are areas where life can get difficult. I mean, growing a business can be difficult. Growing connections with your family can be difficult. Not getting angry can be difficult. Like all of these things are difficult. And so when you think about the areas of that you're actually helping people through, a lot of those areas are difficult. And so when that comes to be the case, like you got to think about like perseverance and how that is actually going to be a skill for you to develop and continue to lean into so that you can actually build trust with the people that you're following or that are following you. He says, the next one is godliness. He says, it's a term that refers to someone's inner response to the things of God, which shows itself in reverence. He says, no matter how anyone expresses their spiritual beliefs, we know the real thing when genuine spirituality shows up instead of empty religiosity. True inner reverence and a depth are apparent, and they invite our trust. The next one is brotherly kindness. The term refers to being a loving friend or having affection for brothers or sisters. He says, without the demonstration of kindness, trust does not ensue. So, of course, that's probably why a lot of salespeople like try to show up kind, right? Because when they're kind, they feel a little bit more trustworthy. But also sometimes when they're having those conversations, maybe it's the motive that kind of like gets me, or maybe just like not even understanding where I'm coming from. That's what, eliminates the trust for me for sure. And then he said love. He said the Greek word for love is agape. In this passage is deep, but its overall flavor is one of goodwill and benevolence for someone. It is acting toward a person with preference. How good it feels, how much we trust, we extend. When someone acts toward us with preference, we are a VIP to them in every sense of the term. And oxytocin bounds when we are treated this way. So when people love us and they lean on us in that way, it also creates a certain emotion and trust inside of us that we're willing to give back to them. So those are some of the soft skills that's required for you to actually be able to develop that level of trust. All right, now there's some other sections that I actually highlighted in here. Let's see what it says. While certain qualities help make relationships successful and enjoyable and certain ones move business forward, there are also traits that get in the way of the trust needed for relationships to go well or business to get done. Here are a few things to consider. So this is the opposite. We talked about the good qualities to have in order to pass this part of, which is step number 4 of building up trust. These things will diminish trust. Number 1 is defensiveness. What happens when you feel you cannot point out a problem to someone or you need them to change a behavior? If they are defensive, conflicts are very difficult to resolve and corrections are a nightmare. So when somebody is defensive, we lose trust in them. Anger. If somebody rises to anger, we lose trust on them. Narcissism, meaning everything's about them, we lose trust in them. And this is another thing, like if you were talking to somebody about your program and your product and all you're doing is talking about you, I mean, there's parts there where you can share your story, but if all you're doing is talking about you and you're not letting the other person talk about them, how can you have an understanding of them? It's just, it's you talking about you. And I know because I did this a lot, especially early on, because I was so excited about what it is that I was selling that I wanted to do that. But the more that I made it about the other person, the more that it actually worked out better for both of us in the end. Drama and emotional instability. Some of you guys may have had this. Like if some of you guys are coaches and you convinced someone to join your team and you're like, why did I actually invite them to join my team or to get on a one-on-one with me? Because like somebody who brings the drama and emotional instability, it's very hard to trust them. Control. Like if somebody has to have all the control, that also removes trust. Neediness and dependency. So if the person is needy or dependent on you, that can also reduce trust. Irresponsibility, of course. Codependency or lack of boundaries. Gossip or divisive behavior. All of those things that really, really attack our character. And when we attack our character, it makes us like lose trust for the other person. But also, if we show those character traits and we don't develop the skills to get past those character traits, in reality, we're showing up in a way that people are not going to trust us. That's one of the things that I feel like we do a great job of inside of our life coach certification, is realizing that those skills can be solved if you have those kind of like situations that you're in, by simply understanding what's going on in your brain, the thoughts that are kind of like taking over, and your head voice, and how it's getting you to show up that way gives you the power to be able to make a different direction, to take a different stance, to be able to tap into what we call our heart voice, to be able to find a different way to show up. If that's something you're interested in, by the way, ever, just reach out to me. But it's powerful when you have a tool to be able to correct those things. A lot of people think that I'm an angry person, or I'm a frustrated person, or I'm a needy person. And it's just because of the story you're telling yourself, and you're just trying to label yourself because it feels comfortable, not thinking that you have to change, but you can 100% change by thinking about the stories that you tell yourself, okay? All right, the fifth essential element of trust is a track record. What someone has done before is usually the best indicator of what will happen next time. And he says, trust cannot be given only on a promise. Just trust me. You're just going to have to trust me on this. How many of you guys have ever either been said that, or somebody has told you that? And it's kind of like a red flag where it's like, not really. It can't be that way, right? It has to also be that there's some track record. He says, trust is not a toggle switch with two settings, on or off. But unfortunately, that's how many people view it. Do I trust this person or not? He says they meet or even know someone, then in some arena, either personal or professional, go from no trust, because it's a new relationship, to total trust. Think about a person who decides to marry after 3 or 4 dates, or a company that promotes a new hire to department head after a few months of employment. These situations often don't end well because people haven't been required to prove themselves. And he says track record is that ability of you being able to prove yourself. So being able to take those steps, having that track record, and showing up, taking action, and then obviously continuing to grow and continuing to do that over and over and over again, build your track record. It's one of the things that it is my greatest weakness and my greatest strength. And that is like, I will do something that I said I was going to do no matter what. Sometimes to the point of like overwhelm and burnout and all that great stuff. By the way, Teresa and I have a really powerful video about that coming out in 2 weeks. I actually got asked to speak in front of 900 law enforcement officers who are struggling with burnout, and they really loved it, so I wanted to bring it here to the channel. But that's kind of like my personality, is like when I go all in, I'm going to go all in and I'm going to see it to the end. And sometimes that's not a good thing, because maybe I should have stopped and changed direction or figured out a different way of doing it. But that's kind of like my MO, is like when I decide to do something, I'm going to follow through. But in this respect, it actually kind of does help me, because my track record is I'm going to show up. Like if you ask me to speak, I'm going to show up. If you ask me to, do a one-on-one call with you, I'm going to show up. Like there's very rare situations when I'm not going to show up, and also not going to show up on my A game. Like I'm going to show up on my A game and deliver whatever I can with that. And it's because like I want to make sure that I stay true to my track record, and I'm able to build that, right? But there's also other areas where I'm not doing so well with my track record. It's just like this give and take. But as I'm reading this, I'm like, man, this is such a powerful thing, because I do look at people's track records. Like if somebody is like some type of coach, for example, and I see them showing up every once in a while and then sometimes not, and then every once in a while they'll show up and they're like, hey, I'm starting my business again. It's like, oh my gosh, like your track record is not really great, right? And so of course, like you don't want to shame or guilt yourself into that. You just got to ask yourself, like, what can I do to make sure that I stay on track and I still am consistent so I can build up that track record? But track record is an important part of the process, right? If you're hiring a business coach, right? And the person's like, I'm a business coach, let's go, right? And you're like, well, how many clients you have? And they're like, well, you're my first one, but I'm going to totally crush it. I hope you do give people opportunities like that, but also I hope that you're not paying that person, $20,000 to like actually help coach you through the process, right? Because they don't really have a track record. But if you talk to someone and they're like, oh yeah, I have, 13 clients right now. I have multi-million-dollar clients that I actually help. I actually help a doctor, this and this and this. Now you're like, oh wow, okay, so they have a track record. Now this is somebody that I can depend on and trust, right? In the book, he's talking about like a surgeon, right? So he went to get some things for his knee. He was having some problems with his knee, and he went to several different people, and they some of them didn't have good track records. Some of them had really great track records, and that like really helped him to see that why he had trust for some people and why he didn't have trust for others. The person that he had trust for, number one, came from a place of understanding of like, man, that must suck. Like, I hate that that happened to you and that your knee is in that kind of, it must suck to not be able to do this or to play golf or whatever. Like, I want to do what I can on my end to get you back to playing golf again, because you deserve to have that kind of like life and to have that fun. Oh, and also, like, I'm the person who invented the prosthetic knee that I can put into place, right? And so not only did the person have the understanding, and also their motive was like to really feel like they helped them, but they had a track record because they had done that before. And so when you think of all these things, putting them to work, he says these 5 pieces will help you build trust faster than anything. Number 1 is having an understanding. So do you understand what is going on, where the person is struggling, why they need your help, what it is that they're like looking to achieve? Do you understand that? Number 2 is, what is your motive? Like, do you really want what's best for them? Or are you just trying to make a sale, or just trying to take a, get an extra view? Or do you really want to do what you can on your part to help them? Number 3 is your ability. Like, what are your abilities? Is this an area where you actually have the ability to help them? I will never tell somebody to work with me if I do not have the ability to help them, right? If they're like, hey, can you help me rebuild my engine in my car? I'm like, I do not have that ability. Please go find somebody else who could do that, right? So number 3 is having the ability. Number 4 is character. Even if they have an understanding, their motive is good, and they have ability, if they like turn their camera off and I find some details about them related to like their character in terms of how they show up or how they treat people or anything like that, and that's happened to me plenty of times. Like, this is probably one of those things that really deters me from trusting people, is like when I find out about them not making their family a priority, all of those other things that I like reached out to them and wanted to actually get their help with totally diminishes, because I'm like, no, I don't want to hang out with people who don't value their family just like I do. And that's why character is so important when it comes to building trust. And the last one, number 5, is track record. Like, do you have a track record? Are you taking the actions? Are you like having your list of people that you've already helped? And if not, what are you doing to build it, right? What are you doing to build up your track record? Now, I'm gonna end this review here, because we're gonna continue on chapter 9. But this last part I think is really, really critical, and that is like, sometimes we feel like the track record that we've been in has to be in the exact area that we're helping somebody through. But the truth is that we all go through hard things, and they could be something in a slightly different area. But I like to think of it as like a mountain. When you're in the middle of a mountain and you're climbing up, and it feels like the most hardest mountain in the world, sometimes if you're focused on that current mountain and what you're currently in right now, it's like, oh man, like this is really, really hard right now. But what we fail to see is like we fail to turn around and see that we've actually climbed some really huge mountains in the past. We've gone through some things that helped us become stronger on the other side. We know now what shoes to wear, who to hang out with, where to stop for food, when to stop for water, when to stop when the weather and take a nap, all that kind of stuff, like where base camps are, right? And we get to take all of those things with us into the next area that we go into. So don't forget, when it comes to track record, yes, if you're a coach, I want you to be, to have a track record of being able to coach people through situations, but there's so many other things that you could actually put into your belt, so many other things that you can literally show them, even if it's you being able to coach yourself through that process, to really show them that you do have a track record of doing hard things, being able to show up, being able to get people results, because that's one of those things that I feel like it's a tool that you could use from a different mountain to help you climb the next one. All right, guys. Appreciate you for being here. I hope that you have dove into this book yourself. We're going to actually get into chapter number 9, which is building your trust muscle, next time. Once a month we meet so we can go through the book of the month. If you're not a part of the book club, I'll leave you that link. It's modernleadership.us/book club. It's a free book club. And then if you're not a part of our inner circle, where we take a deep dive into some of the topics that we talk about here, but also the things that our community is struggling with. And at the same time, being around other entrepreneurs who are family driven, people who are really want to make a huge impact in their business while also connecting better with their family than ever before without having to burn themselves out. That's what we do inside of the inner circle 2 times a month. Super pumped to have Caroline, Rebecca, and Marianne as new members of the inner circle. And I appreciate you guys for what you do out there every single day, for showing up, for being here. And if there's anything that I can do, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask. Keep crushing it. Keep doing what you can to build trust, not only in your business, but also when it comes to like the trust that you're building in your kids, in your family, in your relationships, because this is really ultimately the name of the game, is when people can trust and they feel like they're safe, they're going to be willing to take that next step with you. And I know that it's in their best interest because you're here, you have a heart of service, you want to be able to help them. I appreciate you for wanting to make that impact. And I will see you guys very soon on one of our next live streams. All right. Have a great day and see you soon.